Hey, Gauri, thanks for being on the show. Great to have you here.
I'm thrilled to be here. I've been looking forward to this, super excited.
Awesome. Hey, want to really understand more about you, so take you back to your early days. How did you get hooked onto the SaaS industry?
If I go way, way back, as I like to say now, I'm definitely more senior, but still young at heart. So I actually started moving into like cloud and SaaS back when I was at the end of my days at Oracle. That's when like things really started to heat up and you kept hearing about SaaS and cloud, but nobody really knew what it was or how to do it. Salesforce was the first foray that you heard about SaaS and cloud. And being a partner person, I'm always attuned to what's new and what's happening and what's out there because you have to be ahead of even your leadership team when it comes to that kind of stuff. So you're looking at
Mm,
solutions and figuring out like where customers are going to go and who you partner with. And I realized at that point, like it was going to go up, right? And the big guys were not moving that fast. I'm really going to date myself. At the end of 15, and I had a career way before that too, by the way. Everything builds up to where you are. But at the end of 2015, I saw that happening and I saw like the big players were not moving. They were still on prem. And I thought to myself like, okay, I need to figure this out and I need to get on the bandwagon because it's going to happen and I don't want to be left behind. And I want to learn about it too. So at the time I made the big decision, I look back now and it wasn't really that big, but at the time I went from 36,000 people Oracle to 800 people Marketo. And that would to me was a big, oh my God, am I going to a startup? And then I went smaller and smaller. But that was my first foray into cloud. And then from there, I went to Showpad, which was like 200 people, European, true startup, true SaaS, and built up the whole ecosystem there. And I was lucky. You can base a lot of things on data, which is very important. But there's something about gut feeling too that I still truly believe you got to follow your intuition as well. And if you put those two together, I think you make good decisions. At the time, I didn't realize I was making a good decision, but that's when I jumped into it. And that's like how everything rolled from there.
And that's a huge amount to achieve in just your early 20s, right? Like you had a whole career, did all of those things just in your first couple of years of being 20s. But if you try to break it down, can you think what's a couple of like major, like big wins, big achievements you had in your career as you progress along, stuff that you look back on now? Because in the moment, you never take time to take stock of anything you achieve. It's always got to be someone pushing you to think backwards. What's a couple of things you can think back on going like that was a major achievement?
That's a really good question because, especially lately, I've been reflecting on how do I give myself more grace. And like I said, every moment brings you to the next moment to where you are. So if I look back, I think so one big achievement was I moved from Toronto to New York City by myself from Accenture to Price Waterhouse at the time. So that's really dating myself, not knowing anybody, right? And succeeding.
You were 14 when you did that.
Oh yeah, Sean, I like you. But from there, I delivered to clients and customers, and I got myself to a position where I was like the right-hand person to the global IBM Oracle leader. And with that woman leader, she and I actually created a business where even though IBM and Oracle were competitors, we became Oracle's number one partner in retail and financial services. And that's huge. And that really opened up my eyes. And so that led me then to Oracle on the product side. So from the consulting to the product side. And there I was able to achieve about 85% of all the deals for the retail global business unit had partners in them, and they didn't have that before. And when I went to Marquette, it is a big deal because nobody ever, and even to this day, people are like, don't really know how to partner. And to be able to put the structure and navigate internally and navigate externally, and it's a lot of work. And it was also a global role for me. I think the next one was when I went to Marketo, and I thought in my mind it was smaller, but they didn't have anybody doing work with any of the big players like Accenture or Deloitte. And I actually created that relationship, and we won like Facebook and Visa. And those were big, and they didn't know how to work with those big SIs. So that was a big win for me. And when I went to Showpad, which was even smaller, I got the chance to create a partner ecosystem pretty much from scratch, like a consulting agency ecosystem and a technology ecosystem, which they never had and I had never done before. And that drove 20% of the global pipeline. And then that brought me to Inriver, which I think everything has built on each step. And I think this is where I feel the most proudest, and it's been the biggest milestone because I drove a global team, again, built up an ecosystem of consulting partners and technology partners, drove 45% of the overall company revenue, over 50% of the sourced pipeline, had an amazing team that actually collaborated across the globe and had the best partners and went through, I think the biggest milestone so far is that we went through it. I was part of the executive team and was able to go through a transaction. And we sold to a PE firm. And it's one thing to be able to say, yeah, I did that, put it on your resume, but to actually go through the hard work and like the blood, sweat, and tears and come out, it's like, wow. And then I'm like, oh, be careful what you ask for because you can get it.
Yeah. Yes. And it is a lot of work to go through those things. And it's pretty exciting to talk to someone who's achieved so much, especially in the partnership arena, because that's definitely something I've tried multiple times and probably got wrong multiple times. Luckily, I had Ricky to fix it, but it's definitely something that takes a serious skill set to get right.
To that point, though, Gauri, it is misunderstood, partnership and alliance, the power behind it, especially in the B2B SaaS sector. You've come from very large brands where it was probably in tune with what they were doing, it was weaved into their DNA, so to speak. Even the early stage founders that we speak to, partnership and alliances, it doesn't really feature into their plan. Like they might be at 4 million or 5 million ARR, just looking at adding more sales horsepower or perhaps marketing. Why is it misunderstood, Gary? And what are some of the tips and advice can you give to those early stage founders to go actually put on your radar? And these are the things that you should look out for.
Yeah. So I'm also an angel investor and I advise a lot of very early stage startups. I love working with early stage startups, but I think even with the big guys, it's still hard because everyone's like revenue, revenue, revenue. And yes, partnerships. And I was just on a call the other day with a cohort of CROs, and one of them was like, partnerships is the fastest way to revenue and the most effective. But you can't expect a partnership to drive revenue overnight. It's not going to happen, right? I do think that for B2B and for early stage startups and scale ups, it's really looking at where are your strengths, where's your gap, who's your customer, and who can help you, and how and what's in it for them to work with you, and come up with the right value proposition that is right for the customer first, and then work backwards into what kind of partnership arrangement do you want? Do you want it to be only referrals? Do you want it to be a co-sell? And don't just make co-sells. Don't say a referral is a co-sell. Two different things, right? Or do you want it to be a sell through type of thing? So somebody white labels for you. And I think that early stage startups don't think about partnerships because they immediately think like, how are they going to bring me leads? Instead of actually saying, how do I collaborate and actually help them be successful? That will help me be successful. And then once you do that, again, it's not overnight. You then get into customers you wouldn't have the ability to get to. Your brand increases, your reach increases, your revenue increases, your pipeline increases, your marketing, which if you can't do, maybe they can do it, gets better. And you also get feedback. And I think a lot of companies don't realize that feedback is so important to become better. And I would say that I think early stage startups should do more partnering, but they have to change their expectations. And I think across the board, there has to be better, how do we collaborate versus what do we get from it right away? Because you will get that revenue back. And then from there, you got to build the right program.
And I think that Ricky will deep dive more into the program and the playbook part, I'm sure, as he goes along. But just where I have seen early stage people do it, I think the trap that you mentioned is pretty much what they fall into. They'll do a partnership deal. It's usually not well thought out or put together. They'll be expecting lead flow and they'll wait for the lead flow. But from the partnership perspective, they're like, cool, these guys are super excited. They sold me this thing. And then I don't hear from them. All I get is emails going, hey, have you got anyone who fits, anyone coming through? And it just becomes this lead relationship. There's no actual partnership there. It's just a contractual agreement and then a waiting procedure. There's no help to onboard. There's no keeping that excitement and partnership build moving forward. And you dip your toe into it, you try it and go, I got burnt. It didn't work. I didn't get many leads. And you close your partnership and move away. And I think the difficulty is if you don't know some of the things you mentioned, and I think we'll quiz you a bit more on it, it can be quite hard to understand. Like you said, is it a co-sale? Is it a lead flow event? Are you going to actually white label? Have you had any of those thoughts in your head before you decided to knock on that person's door and handshake a partnership deal?
Yeah, a lot of people go into partnerships. I always say partnerships is like dating, and you're never going to be exclusive with one person, and you're never going to get truly married unless you really decide to, and then that's a whole other ballgame. But you need to start somewhere and with the right partners. So you got to do your research. You got to figure out, like, who do I want to target? Are they part of my ICP? Do I know who my ICP is? Do they have the right solutions? Are they the right technology partner? Or are they the right agency or consulting partner? And then everybody wants to go to the big consulting guys right away. And my thing is, don't. They won't pay attention to you. You don't make enough for them to make enough money, right? What's in it for them? Think about what's in it for the partner. Work with your regional partners first. Make your name and then move your way up.
Yeah, that's a solid tip, right? Choose what's right for you at the level you're at. One of the things that I often find, Gary, people underinvest in is enablement for partners.
Yeah.
They always think of their internal teams, but partners are like these orphans or second cousins that often just they're out of the picture. So any tips there or whatever you learned along the way that you'd like to pass on?
Yeah, enablement is so critical. And I think whether it's partner enablement or sales enablement, right? So critical. And you're starting to hear more about it, just like you're hearing more about partners now. But enablement is where you're able to articulate your story. First of all, do you have the right story? And can you articulate it? Because if you can't articulate it to a partner, can you articulate it to a customer? Then it's how do you, depending on the type of partner, if it's a technology partner, do you have the right type of integrations? Do they understand the value? And can they articulate it to their sales teams and their customers? I think a lot of people overlook technology partners, but I always look at it as customers have technology stacks. They're working with those partners already, or they're thinking about working with those partners. And what I always do the last few times, I've always gotten into the room with the chief product officer, and I've put like our product in the middle of a whiteboard. And I say to the CPO, draw me what are the complementary adjacent technologies that our customers have or want to have, and then figure out which players are the right players in those technologies, and then prioritize, and then figure out how to go after them. But the enablement for those technology partners is critical in that way because you're connecting, right? And you're trying to help the customer just make things easier for them. On the consulting side, whether it be an agency or a systems integrator, it's important because a lot of the times those agencies or SIs are actually going into the customer before you are. And if they don't know how to talk about you, the value you bring, the gaps you fill, why you're better than your competitors, if you don't treat them as an extension of your sales team, then you're missing something. And that's enablement. And then from there, are you technically enabling them to, if your solution is a little more complex and there's implementation dollars around it, are you technically enabling them so that they're actually delivering a great solution so that the customer is happy? So that then they're also your references and advocates as a customer, but also there's then the ability to cross-sell and upsell. And usually the partner that's already in there, they know that cross-sell or upsell is coming.
Really good tip there too. And then again, leaning back to our days, and then the things we struggled mostly with when it came to partnership and alliances, Gauri, was metrics. How do you actually measure it? Because as you said, a lot of it's a long tail. You've got to invest time and resources into it before it actually gives you dividends. So what are some of the key ones that if you're going back to the early stage, if you were to start off with whatever bucket or partnership, whether it be reseller, referral, what are some of the key metrics that you should look out for?
When you said our time, I thought you were also saying that you're as old as I am, but that's okay. Now I understand what you were saying. But
Clearly, we're both older, just much older. No one looks at my beard and goes, "That's a young man. Look at him."
Then you make me feel better.
I look pretty good for my age.
I was going to say, you look pretty awesome for your age. And actually, Sean, you look very good for your age too. And a hat is doing it for you.
I wear a hat and a podcast for a really clear reason, right? I don't want to blind you while you're trying to do this as a light reflects off my head. But.
So metrics. I would say that for early stage startups, I think you always want to tie partnerships to revenue because that's the ultimate goal. So I think that you should have something, but it has got to be realistic in terms of the sourced revenue that a partner brings to you. And this again is assuming that you're giving them the enablement, you're building the trust, all that stuff, right? But sourced revenue, sourced pipeline, and it's got to be qualified. So one of the things that I have always been super picky at is I don't care about leads. If you're working with a partner, I want that to be a qualified opportunity. Okay. And then you start going through length of sales cycle.
Yeah.
To conversion rate. And then you want to break it up into a few different areas. I think like on the consulting side, if you have a certification program or a training program, even like how many resources are they getting certified? And you want that to grow over time if they're a good partner, because the more and more resources that they have certified, that means there's more people out in the marketplace with your badge on them, right? I also think that you want to be able to understand on the consulting side if there's an implementation, or from an agency perspective, if there's some kind of solution that is provided, like how quick it happened, how successful it is. And what a lot of people don't do, and I think they should do, is actually tie partnership deals and delivery to NPS.
Okay.
To the customer journey.
Never thought about that one.
I know. Nobody thinks about it. And a lot of people should be thinking about it because your partners have a big contribution to how well your customers are doing and how well you're doing. It's part of the customer journey, and partners are always left out of it. And after that, on the tech side, you could do sourced as well. But it's also, if you have an integration, the quality of the integration, how many customers are using it. But both of those sides, even referrals, right, is because it tells you from an NPS perspective if that was the right customer. And if it was,
really good point.
And if it was, then is it the partner or is it you?
Yeah, one of the main pushbacks you get to invest in partnerships from a non-board perspective, ignore the metric component, but if from a business, as you're talking about it as executives and sales teams and marketing teams is, or even customer success teams, it's we have a customer journey and we can guarantee quality and we want to make sure everyone gets looked after. And, partners just get let out. It's hard. If we bring partners in, then it's all going to decline. Linking those things together means you can actually keep that quality assurance component. And we've had arguments around it before back in the day, and we never actually provided them with any information to help them stay and provide a similar service to us. So it was probably pretty hard for them to do it. And there's some of the things that I know I got wrong back in the day when we were trying it, and we got right over time as we built it out. But never thought about tying it to like an NPS and therefore getting that quality control and really making sure that consistency in customer journey is what you're looking for, whether it's internal sales team, external groups. It's that consistency of customer journey.
Yeah, because if you have happy customers, those customers are going to stay with you, and they're going to stay with the partner too. And then that just creates more trust. It creates more opportunity. It creates more collaboration and innovation. And people, it's changing, but it's not in practice. And I think I'm passionate about, like, I love what I do. It's not easy, right? Being in a partnerships function, it's like you're a salesperson, you're a marketing person, you're a product marketing person, you're a product person, you're an SDR, you're a therapist, like it's everything, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're a mediator. But at the end of the day, there is a common goal. It's revenue. Bigger than that, it's your customers.
Very well said. Gary, one of the other things that comes up as you then mature on the growth curve is that where does the partnership actually sit within the functional growth of a business? I think you touched on it. You're in the middle of everything. But
Yeah.
is it a function that should be set aside? Is it a part of sales? Is it part of marketing? Where does it belong?
Yeah. I think it depends on the stage of the company. I think early stage, it probably should sit with sales, or it could even sit with product, to be honest, depending on the type of relationship, right?
Which one it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been focusing on the consulting or SI and agency and then the technology, but there are other relationships. But I think when you get to the point where you're like 20 million, 25 million to 50, like if you're a scale up type, I think if you're the 20 to about 35, it would sit with sales. I think that, quite frankly, if the company's really serious about partners and you do it right, it's a separate go-to-market motion. It's separate, but it's not, because the way that I've done it is I've ended up in the middle of an organization because I support sales, I actually feed them. And because a lot of salespeople don't go find their own deals, they depend on SDRs. Poor SDRs are trying to cold call everybody. So the partner deals are the ones that are actually driving the pipeline and revenue. Marketing, doing marketing with partners, you get more reach. Product, you're giving feedback into the product and helping them. And especially if you have integrations, which then connects to development. And if you have a professional services arm, then you got to be working with them as well. And partnerships actually sits in the middle of the organization and has to manage all of these stakeholders as well as external stakeholders. So in my opinion, it should actually be a separate go-to-market motion, right? Like it should be sales, marketing, and there should be a partnership function that's separate. What you usually see is that it reports up into sales, which makes it hard because the metrics, or even if it reports into marketing, the metrics don't fit. They have to measure partner and alliance or channel people. It's a different set of metrics because it's a different motion.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I just want to switch gears here for a minute, Gary. You worked with some of the biggest tech brands, all the way from IBM to inriver and everything in between. Have you always been intentional about the role you're going to take on? And what is it that you look for from that role and your next steps? Do you map that out before you actually go in?
I would say initially, no. I was like, oh, that looks super interesting. I fell into the partner piece, right? I was a consultant with Price Waterhouse or Anderson Consulting at the time. But yeah, I was a consultant delivering like HR solutions. And then my client was PeopleSoft down in California. And from there, I started working with technology partners, but I was delivering the solutions. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I got really good at being the conduit between clients and the technology partner. And that turned into doing like everything from implementations to change management to strategy to marketing. And then I got into partners and I realized I was really good at it. It was my genius, right? To be able to engage, to collaborate, to understand somebody else's perspective, and then look at the customer's perspective and what the company I was working for was trying to do and put it together. And then it just was something that, like, the opportunities kept coming. And after I was at Oracle, that's when I got more intentional. And I started to look at what are the technologies out there that are needed, but are super interesting. I'm going to learn from, I can bring value to. And I wasn't really looking at what my title was or that kind of thing. And so I went to Marketo, but then from there, when I went to Showpad, I was like, okay, I've done this. Now I want to build something from scratch. And that's where I was able to do it at Showpad. And then when I got to Inriver, I'm like, okay, I know how to build something from scratch, which I can do, but now I want this to become something really big. And I knew that I wanted to get into a situation where either we IPO'd or we sold. And that's what I saw at Inriver. And initially, I wasn't intentional. And then as I got to know more and understood what I was good at, but also what I wanted to learn. And sometimes, like I said, be careful what you ask for, because when you step into those some things, you don't realize how hard it can be, but super rewarding.
Absolutely. Sounds like then, if not maybe intentional about joining, but perhaps on the flip side, you knew where you wanted to get to, and therefore you knew when it was right time to say goodbye, perhaps.
Yeah.
You knew when it was time to leave because you've achieved everything you set out to do. Is that a fair comment?
It's a very fair comment. I think as you gain more experience, you get more comfortable with yourself and you start to really own yourself. And I think it's an evolution, right? Over time, you never stop learning, and you learn a lot of new things about yourself. And sometimes you surprise yourself of, oh, I didn't know that I would do something like that. But I've become more clear on when it's time to exit somewhere. And I think it's a few things. It's not only what I need, but it's also, what am I giving? Am I giving it my all? Am I burnt out? Because there's one thing of what I'm receiving, which I've been lucky and I'm grateful for it, but it's also, you got to be able to give of yourself as well.
Yeah. That's a really good point, right? Mentorship matters. And
Yeah.
you touched on the fact that you're also an angel investor. So outside of that, Gary, what else are you doing to give back or pay it forward to the tech scene?
I love helping. Like, I've advised a bunch, and today I just actually had 2 calls today with a generative AI sales ABM startup that I'm just trying to help, like, connect with other companies and figure out how they could get revenue and potentially figure out how to hone their message and thought leadership and who they can go after, even globally, and where the low-hanging fruit is. And then I had another call with a very early stage startup around partner marketplaces and to help them articulate their story, right? And even internally articulate to their team what they're trying to do and where they could go. And I think, like, sharing my story and some of the things that I've done and then looking at what they're doing and giving them ideas, to me, that brings me a lot of joy. I love to be able to, and I'm at a point now where I've done so much, like, through blood, sweat, and tears, that I actually love sharing that and sharing the knowledge just to help. And it's not only mentorship, but I get something back too, because I'm also learning about new things that are happening that I'm like, oh, okay. On that call today, I was like, okay, you're talking about this, but if you put it in real life, that's what it means. And they've never done it, right? And so it's a great, again, collaboration. And I continue to do that. Like I said, I advise and early invest in some UK startups, do the same thing. And where I can actually provide connections and introductions and bring people together, which that I love doing that, right? Is bringing people together and seeing them succeed. It's
That's
really
the best. That's the space Ricky and I are playing. We haven't achieved anywhere near what you've achieved over your career, but just the same space I guess we're playing. It's been able to give back a little bit to the industry and to new founders coming up and watch them go on the journey and the excitement. And the journey is fun. It's hard, it's stressful, but it is fun, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we do it. And to be able to help and guide some other people to go on that journey and then watching them go through and enjoy it and have the same wins and losses and struggles and tribulations, but overcome and conquer them. It's great. And like you said, you learn so much because instead of just doing a thing and it's 1,000% of what you do, you're doing 4 or 5 things and you get that excitement and enjoyment multiple times in a day, which I love.
Yeah, whenever I have a team, like I've told my last team, I was like, whether you stay here or you go somewhere else, I know that I've been successful if you have actually gone somewhere else and you've moved up. And a few of them have. They've gotten bigger roles, they've gotten pay raises, they're super happy with what they're doing. And I'm like, great. But I'm lucky
Yeah.
enough I got that too.
I was just going to ask that. Best leaders often have great mentors themselves. So, what have been some of the most invaluable lessons or tips or advice that you've gotten from them over the years, Gary?
I would say that I'm super lucky with the bosses, the mentors, colleagues, like to this day, right? I just got a text today from one of my favorite bosses and like the man who actually moved me to Chicago, and just an amazing person who just checking in on me to make sure that I'm doing okay. And there's CEOs and CMOs and chairmans. And I think the best advice I've gotten, even though it sounds a little hokey, is really trust yourself. And a lot of people don't trust themselves. I also think know your worth and think big. Yeah. And I think that, again, you hear that, but it's so true. And recently, I was talking to somebody and he said to me, Gauri, know your worth and know when to walk away when it's not good for you. It's not for you. And I was like, okay. And I walked away from something and I felt better. But usually I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to go make it
Fucking
happen.
yeah.
Yeah. And now I'm getting to that point where it's like, they were right. Know your worth, walk away, because better and bigger things will happen.
I really love the trust yourself. Everyone talks about the others all the time, but not many people say that, trust yourself. And I think I struggled with it early on in my career. And at other times, even when I was really senior in my career, going, geez, I don't know if this is a great idea. And everyone's got the voice in their head that they're talking to themselves continually, right? And trusting yourself, I think, is a big differentiator between going on and having success and not, because it's not always the easiest thing to do.
No, it's not. Especially in our industry, it's not.
That's true. Future is bright for all of us. What are you most excited about? What's on the radar for you? What's coming up next?
It's a good question. So I came out of this exit. I took some time off. I traveled, and I'm like doing what I enjoy, doing a lot of this. I'm speaking, helping some startups, advising. And I think there's probably another 1 or 2 operator roles. I think I'd still like to do that and do something that I haven't done before in terms of an operator role, maybe expand from partnerships into a little more of the go to market. And then I think continue to grow the investing side and the advising side, and consulting with a lot of scale ups, because again, it's just something I really have a lot of fun doing.
That's awesome.
I got a good idea.
Yeah. Looking forward to what you do next. I'm sure it'll be great. Would love to take you through a quick fire round questions, Gary. We asked, I guess they pop on the show
Okay.
the same questions, and most of them are easy. We'll save the
Okay.
best one for last. Favorite music genre?
I hate favorite questions because I usually don't have a favorite things because I like so many things.
Oh,
But
two then. Two. Can have two.
Every
Okay.
one of these
Yeah.
questions are favorite questions.
oh, are they? Okay. So here goes. I would say old rock and roll, but lately
Okay.
I've been listening to a lot more classical music. I don't know why. I just came back from Italy, and for
Nice.
some reason, it's really I'm loving it right now.
Yeah. New Year.
Never thought I
Nice.
would say that.
I'm just happy you didn't say rats because this seems to be a continual theme of people Ricky picks.
We'll lead to this part. I'll just say Gary saying hip hop and R&B and mostly rap, but a little bit of classic.
Funny.
Favorite two movies then, if not one.
Actually, I
All
just
right.
have one.
You're supposed to be
favorite movie.
controversial. You're supposed to force him to pick one. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
no,
See,
but
one.
No, two, and then
actually-
we'll go down to one.
I
Yeah.
actually have one favorite movie. That's the only thing I do have
Oh,
a
you
favorite
do?
of. Yeah.
Okay. Let's hear it.
The Great Escape.
Oh,
That's a good
okay.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Steve McQueen.
Yeah. And you
Yeah,
must
that's a
have a
good movie.
favorite for this next one. Favorite drink on Friday or after an event or on the weekend or when you're in Italy, somewhere south. What are you doing? What are you drinking?
Okay. So I do, but it's seasonal, kind of. So I'm not going to say
that's-
one,
That's
but
fair.
seasonal's okay.
Yeah.
yeah. A really good old fashioned I love that, right?
And
Love
Chicago's got some
bourbon.
good ones. Yeah.
So many. You need to come to
Mm.
Chicago and I'll take you out to a bunch of
Yeah.
places. It's like great whiskey and bourbon bars. But I love European wines. I don't drink American wines anymore. They give me hangovers. I don't feel good. I don't think they're that great quality.
Mm.
I only drink, and some New Zealand, Australian wines, by the way. I do like those.
Yeah, you're about
But-
to get questioned hard then. Right?
And then being in Italy recently, like the Aperols,
Oh, yeah. On a good summer's day.
yeah, States. I'm like, what is this shit? Can I say that? Sorry.
Yeah, 100%. Yes.
Okay.
Because
So-
everyone agrees in the world.
I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not. So I stopped drinking. And granted, they have some good like IPAs or whatever, but I don't drink that stuff anymore.
Me either.
But Pim's also in the summer when I'm in the UK.
Pim's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Only in the UK, though.
Only in the UK.
Plenty there.
I sadly
Yeah.
drink Foster's in the UK because it's the closest thing to a real beer I can get.
You've been traveling a fair bit. You mentioned, Gary, what are some of the favorite places you've been to or favorite places you haven't been to yet?
So
See, I've added places.
I appreciate that.
Place.
So everyone knows, and you guys now will too, is I love London. Just love London. There's something about it that like me and London loves me too. It's just a great place. But that being said, I fell in love with Italy while I was there. Literally, like there was just something so special and magical about it. And the people were just so warm. So I would say like the lake region in Italy was beautiful.
Yeah.
And I do Barcelona is a favorite as well.
All good places. Yeah. I think you're going to say, of course, New Zealand. But
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I need down there. It might become one of my favorite
Yeah.
places.
that's it.
It's like,
Never
where's
know.
New Zealand on the map? Is that attached to Australia? I'm confused.
Anyways, moving on to the final and the most controversial.
Okay.
Only if you get it wrong, that is. Peanut butter. How do you like yours? Crunchy or smooth?
Crunchy.
Oh, she
yes.
gets
Oh,
it.
no.
Good call.
Yeah.
Good call.
She's one
Really?
of us. Yeah.
Okay.
She gets- yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's got to be crunchy.
Hands
100%
down.
crunchy. Yeah.
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 It's not smooth. I don't trust people who like smooth peanut butter.
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
Oh,
100%.
you've said it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
gone on
Yeah.
the record.
That's going to be the clip that comes out, right? I don't trust people who like,
I don't trust smooth people.
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't trust smooth people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, crunchy peanut
This has
butter
been amazing.
all the way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Couldn't
100%.
agree anymore. Thank you once again, Gauri, for all your insights and being candid. This has been a blast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.